Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre will run in an upcoming by-election in Alberta. Damien Carrick, the Conservative MP-elect for Battle River Crowfoot, announced that he will resign his seat in order to make that happen. The party won that riding on Monday with nearly 82% of the vote. To help break down Pierre Poilievre's move to now run in Alberta, we are joined by Ryan Jespersen. Ryan is the host of Real Talk, a daily news and politics show, and he joins us now from Edmonton. Ryan, thanks so much for taking the time here. This riding that Pierre Poilievre not has chosen, but is now going to, the elected MP is going to step down. This is a pretty sure bet, it seems. Are you surprised that they would have gone for this particular riding?
I'm not surprised at all, Sarah, and thank you for having me. This Battle River Crowfoot riding is about as close to a sure thing as you get in conservative politics across the country. The incumbent Damien Carrick, a two-term member of Parliament and a popular one, albeit a backbencher, won with 82% of the vote just a number of days ago. Of course, he'll step aside to make way for the Conservative leader, and you have to assume that after realizing on Monday night, and maybe before that sure things sometimes aren't sure things, Team Poilievre, that figured, based on polling over the past 18 months or so, that they would be forming Canada's next government, weren't taking any risks when they were looking at the ridings that they would consider. Now, rumor has it here in the province of Alberta that MP-elect Carrick wasn't the only one to step forward and volunteer his riding for the good of the party, for the good of the party leader. But even in conservative Alberta, some of the other ridings rumored to be in play, including Edmonton-Griesbach, that'd be Kerry Diot, were perceived, no doubt, to be far too risky for Pierre Poilievre to put it out there. If progressives combined forces, imagine him losing a by-election 2 in a row within a week, or whenever this one goes down, that'd be it for the Conservative leader.
Ever since the Liberals did win this election, there's been this talk of separation coming out of Alberta. It occurs to us in our discussions earlier today that Poilievre making this Alberta home riding, in Calgary in particular, might that diffuse the sentiment in any way, having an opposition leader federally from Alberta?
Well, I mean, keep in mind that the Prime Minister is born and raised in Edmonton, although I'm not sure that the majority of Albertans feel like Mark Carney truly is an Albertan. He didn't seek a seat in Alberta. Of course, his professional career has been largely outside the province of Alberta. But Alberta's no stranger to the home of federal political leaders. Preston Manning, obviously Stephen Harper, Stockwell Day. Alberta has produced a lot of conservative politicians. So having Mr. Poilievre represent that riding of Battle River Crowfoot, perhaps a sense of pride for those constituents there. I think it's probably obvious and pretty important to point out that they're not going to be seeing a whole lot of their member of Parliament. You have to assume, as Poilievre's duties will keep him largely in Ottawa or traveling across the country. As for this separatist sentiment, yeah, it's flaring up, and Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith probably is playing a pretty decent role in that with her Bill 54, making it a whole lot easier for Alberta voters to trigger a referendum. The coincidence there, the timing, no chance that's coincidental. But at the end of the day, is this separation sentiment to be taken seriously? If the polls are correct, 2.5, maybe 3 out of every 10 Albertans feel strongly this way, I figure it's time to give the separatists what they want. Let's have that referendum this fall, and let's settle this once and for all.
I'll just point out Mark Carney, because he is a stickler for this. He was born in the Northwest Territories, but you're right. He does often talk. Yes. He talks about Alberta being his home. And of course, Poilievre has certainly roots in Alberta. I'm just struck by, I remember when Stephen Harper won and what a big deal it was in Alberta and in Western Canada that a prime minister was coming from Western Canada. It is something that we don't see very often. And in the fact that Pierre Poilievre is the leader of the opposition, does it give the West potentially more of a voice?
Well, I mean, you remember what the refrain, right, through the late 1980s all the way into the 2000s, and that was that the West wants in. And the sentiment out here, I know I don't have to tell your audience, is that federal elections are typically decided by the time that polls close in Manitoba. And Prairie voters don't feel like they have a say. They don't feel like they're taken seriously. You have to assume that Pierre Poilievre, when he wins the Battle River Crowfoot by-election, will throw some sort of a bone to that riding. But if you look back at the track record of conservative governments in Alberta, or rather conservative governments federally speaking, they've not had demonstrable different results for Alberta either way. It's not as though conservative prime ministers like Stephen Harper have bent over backwards to reward Alberta voters. And so I'm not sure the average person would be preparing to be treated any differently this time around, if we're being honest.
Let me just ask you, you obviously follow conservative politics pretty closely, being based in Alberta. What do you make of, I mean, we haven't heard a lot from Pierre Poilievre since the election, but what do you make of or anticipate the tone of the relationship between Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney might be moving forward?
Well, gosh, I mean, isn't it interesting to see Mark Carney early out of the gates saying that now that this riding has been selected and now that the government or the government in waiting knows exactly when and where the Conservatives want to kick this off, he said he'll try to make it happen as soon as possible. I thought that was kind of an olive branch in a sense. Perhaps the Prime Minister keeping it classy ahead of his first real term before Canadians really get a sense of what he's all about. You also have to wonder if these quiet moments of reflection, which I have to assume Pierre Poilievre has been participating in, the conversation between his own two ears since losing not just the election, but his own riding, if perhaps he will approach his politicking a little bit differently. Very effective out of the gates with the sloganeering attack dog approach. But I think it's safe to say that act wore thin with more than a few Canadian voters. Will it mean a difference in Pierre Poilievre's posturing and his strategy moving forward? I guess we'll see. You have to expect that relationship between the two to be as antagonistic as ever, though, as we better understand now more than ever before that Canada truly does look like it has moved to more of a two-party system.
Host of Real Talk, Ryan Jespersen in Edmonton. Appreciate the conversation. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah.